Hello dear tea friends from around the world. Welcome to a new tea class with me, Stéphane Erler, the founder of the Tea Masters blog and the tea-masters.com tea boutique. We are in our third class for this winter session dedicated to high oxidized oolongs and fully oxidized teas called red teas, Hongcha, or sometimes black teas in the West. And we are on to our star of this session, Oriental Beauty. Last week we brewed the imperial grade Oriental Beauty, this one. And today we are going down now to a more normal, as Oriental Beauty I called tradition. It's from summer 2022. It was picked on Bastille Day, July the 14th. And so the first thing we can do is to compare the previous Oriental Beauty with this one to see the difference that there are in grades. The Oriental Beauty's Imperial grade was from a previous year, it's in 2020, also from summer, but picked a bit earlier. And if we look at the leaves, we don't see actually such a big difference, which really means it's definitely Oriental Beauty. We see white tips in both, maybe a little bit darker colors in the tradition grade. And maybe a little bit the leaves seem a little bit firmer, taking more volume in the imperial grade than in the standard grade. But apart from that, really, it's really not obvious from the naked eye to see and say which one is the imperial grade if you don't know. In terms of smells, maybe slightly more sense in the imperial grade than in the tradition. This makes sense. But very similar ones, they come from the very same farmer. And what we must also emphasize on these Oriental Beauties is that Oolongs are not just about the oxidation level. Here we are in the high oxidation level, but Oolongs also have one very important component, which is roasting. And there is a trend nowadays in the Oriental Beauty industry to make the roasting go away almost, lighter and lighter, so that the freshness of the leaves will add even a lighter note to the scent of Oriental Beauty. So this is a trend that we have seen in the oolong world in general, that there's a less a search for roasted teas, and because teas can be now picked and consumed very quickly, especially here in Taiwan. There is less a need for roasting, which is also one way to preserve the tea. It's not just a way to change its character and its flavors, but in the past it was also one of the main way to preserve the tea before there were vacuum sealed packages, and before you could air condition your room. Roasting was really necessary to help preserve for a longer time these leaves, also for especially for long travels to Europe, to the United States, by sea, which is of course more weather wet, and the journey took several weeks. Now with air travel, within 24 hours, the leaves can depart in Taiwan and arrive in the US or in Europe, and there's less problem with humidity, moisture during the transportation. So this has contributed to the trend of lowering the roast in these leaves. However, I stick to a fair amount of roast in Oriental Beauty because it helps also with aging, and it's always better to find out that your tea, and that the last portion of tea that you drink is better than the first one, than to feel in a rush to drink the last portion in your bag because you feel the freshness is going away, and therefore you are in a hurry to drink it before it becomes bad. Actually, well roasted oolongs have this amazing fact that they are getting better with time, and here roasting is a key element for this. So this one is 2 years old already, and no problem. And this one, even though it was picked mid of July, it was only released in September, October, I think, and because it took some time before it could be well roasted. So, this in mind, let's brew it, and let's try to compare it with our imperial grade we had last week. So I'm not brewing this one again, but we are focusing on the 2022 Oriental Beauty tradition from the summer. So in both are from the same season. So today we are not really looking into the differences of season. This is what we are going to do in the next two classes, because we will brew an Oriental Beauty from fall and one from winter, and then really this will help us to understand the impact of the seasons. But today we want to see what is the change in grade, how it affects the taste and the flavors. And it's easy to be done because these two teas came from the same farmer. In the historical birthplace of Oriental Beauty, which is in Hsinchu County, somewhere near Beppu or Eme. Both the localities claim they are the ones who invented it, but we are not going to take sides. Okay, I've poured very slowly because these leaves are not rolled, they are already simply twisted, so they open up very easily. They're also not very long. Despite being a lower grade, in terms of size, it's not really that obvious that the leaves are much larger. Actually, here they were pretty similar. Maybe it's also because it was the end of my bag. Down in the bag the leaves are a bit smaller, on top they are always a bit larger. And there we go. A nice transparency, very nice shine, nice color. I see also some hair, this how on the surface of the brew. This is not dirt. I insist really, this is these very small hair that grow on tea buds, and really a good indication that there are a lot of tea buds in this brew, and tea buds are the most concentrated types of leaves. They provide the most flavor per gram. The smell, though, this is now the big difference, feel more subdued, less honey than the imperial grade. The sweetness is good. Now we do have the similar smells and scents of this kind of fruity honey smells, but they are just much less concentrated. So since they are cheaper, one way to, if you really want to achieve a very powerful scenting cup, would be to add more leaves to your gaiwan. You see mine is far from being full. I've measured it. I only used 3 grams, like in a testing mode. But and you have also some woody smells that are a little bit a remainder of the roast. So less intensity, but similar flavors, very good transparency, and a nice sweet taste. So it is definitely the same tea, Oriental Beauty, just let's say a little bit kind of a paler version. Especially we were really taken off our feet by this imperial grade. So and it does cost much more than this traditional grade. But so this is the explanation. And as I said, from the leaves, it's not necessarily easy to tell the difference. The difference comes also from the luck of the farmer. Did the insects come and bite his leaves in a huge number or not? And did the climate, did the weather play with? Because in summer, actually, it can rain quite a lot in this region of Sinju. Sometimes it can rain for a long time during the harvest season, so this can also reduce the quality of the leaves. But we have something very similar to the Oriental Beauty we had before, maybe just with a little bit less power and coming back to earth, like a more normal tea. But still, if you forget about this one, it's very pleasant, very well, a good sweetness, interesting flavors. It has a little bit of the honey sweetness, but not as much. And this for me then is really the traditional Oriental Beauty that is harvested when things go well, but are not particularly great, and that's why this is a more ordinary Oriental Beauty, but it has also a good length in the aftertaste, also thanks to the roasting I was speaking of earlier. And this is a tea that maybe feels still a bit closed. It's only 6 months old now, and it's going to open up more as it ages. So this is also a tea that it's possible to wait a bit longer to and age in a tea jar, and it will only get better, more open up. But of course, the intensity of the scents are never going to match those of an imperial grade. which is why we started the class with this imperial grade, so that you really know what this fascination, the magic about Oriental Beauty is about. But now, as the tea cools down a little bit, another interesting thing is the purity in this brew that you can appreciate. It feels very clean, thanks to the fact that they are not using pesticides, because they don't want to scare off the insects. The tea feels very pure, very natural, and it is a tea that you can drink again and again. I'm going to brew it a second time, and then I'll take your questions. And it's a nice lasting tea. Yeah, it's not a tea that that tries to impress you quickly with its freshness. Roasted oolongs tend to be in the earlier time a little bit more closed, but it takes, after a while you can appreciate it. And what I want you to focus also on is the temperature level, this kind of seasonality. We are going to talk about it in the next two classes. To give you a preview, we are going to have one from fall, which will be more intense in terms of heat, and one in winter that will be much less, almost cooling. So this summer version is in between. So for me it is the most harmonious, and that's why it's also the season that produces the best Oriental Beauties, because it is a season that is hot enough to have lots of tea acids, but it's not too hot. When it's too hot, there are actually fewer insects, and also then the leaves, they really grow too quickly and they become too large. This is something we'll see in fall, and it's warm enough that you have the harmonious oxidation, which it's more difficult to get in winter, as we are going to experience later on. So these summer leaves and the summer version is, I think, what is the most fitting, the most representative, the best harmony with Oriental Beauty. Okay, now I've brewed it a little bit stronger in the second brew to extract more flavors. The first brew was very pure, but lacked maybe in flavors. Now this second brew is going to be stronger. Already smell more. Interesting smell. And still very sweet and pure in terms of taste. And it has also a nice lighter touch at the end, reflecting on the quality. It's not definitely not astringent or bitter. It is a sweet, nice touch at the end. So I think this one is also one way to brew this Oriental Beauty from a lower grade is to push a bit the brews, and you can or you can add a bit more leaves than you would with the imperial grade. Okay, thank you very much for watching. I hope that you have enjoyed this tea, and I'll see you next week with the fall version of the Oriental Beauty. Bye bye.